Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Buzz City Breakdown. My name is not Owen Watterson. My name is Albert Butcher, for a change. Usually Owen intros us, but Owen is not here today. He is writing an article for his local newspaper, so I have an absolutely adequate guest instead of Owen to replace him and maybe bring a little less of, let's say, exuberance and hot takes, but definitely a ton of basketball knowledge. It's Matt Alquiza from the Hornets on SI staff. Site manager, I believe, is also the correct title for what you do for the Hornets on SI brand. So super happy to have you here today to discuss the biggest news for the Hornets right now. I think we can definitely say. How's your day been so far, Matt?
It's been good. I strive in everything I do to be called absolutely adequate. So
I,
that was a gift for you to call me that. I don't want to be anything worse than that. So that was a great intro. So thank you, Albert. Excited to be here.
yeah, for sure. I know a lot of people love the enthusiasm and the yeah, well, the good and sometimes bad takes that Owen brings to the pod. So I can assure you that Owen, but also Matt today has a lot of good takes. And
I tried to do my best Owen impression. I've got a small D3 basketball shirt from a college in South
yes,
Carolina.
that's a good
So, you know,
start.
I did my Owen roots there. And then
You've
got
got the
it's
cap.
yeah, minor league baseball hat. I've seen Owen wear some Augusta Green Jacket stuff on the pod. So this is my hometown Kannapolis Cannonballers. So I try to look like Owen as much as possible. I can't replicate his cadence or his takes or anything, but I try to bring a little bit of Owen flair to the podcast this afternoon.
Yeah, you haven't talked about Michael Kidd Gilchrist so far, so you're still quite a bit off, but
Yep.
we'll get there by the end of the episode.
Yeah, no MKG swear jar in my office.
Thank God, thank God. Um, let's dive straight into it. Dennis Schröder, we did a live reaction. Owen and I did to the trade on Friday. You can go back and watch that on our live stream feed on our YouTube channel, where we just give our initial reactions really and talk a lot about the off-court impact, what he can mean to the Hornets as a mentor, more so through leadership. And today we'll also talk about that, surely, but also a bit about the on-court impact more so. What, because we haven't seen you give your reaction on this channel, what's your initial reaction to the trade, or what was it? How has it maybe developed over the last couple of days, reading up on it, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, generally positive. I mean, I wrote about this over on Hornets on SI. Just kind of felt like it was bound to happen. These teams are perfect trade partners. Charlotte needed a backup point guard to insulate Christian Anderson's development and spell Kobe White and just give the team like a decent floor when Kobe White sits. And Dennis Schroeder was the best point guard on the market. Cleveland needed to clear money off their books to re-sign James Harden, continue their pursuits of Peyton Watson and Jonathan Kuminga. So kind of just felt like this has been a trade that is written in the stars for a while, and it was kind of a matter of if, or not if, a matter of when it happened. So yeah, I think it's a positive addition for Charlotte. I don't think Dennis Schroeder really changes a ton about their ceiling, but he raises their floor, and that's what this move was made to do, to raise the floor of the second unit. Which, Albert, you know this. There have been some really, really, really low floor second units
Oh,
in Charlotte because of some of the point guards we've seen back up LaMelo Ball over the past couple of years. So anytime the Hornets acquire a steady veteran backup point guard, it's a solid move in my book.
absolutely. I mean, don't get me started on the Theo Maladons or the Frank Nitilikinas of recent years.
Not a Malachi Flynn guy.
No,
You know, I had a brief flirtation with Damian Ball last year, but that ended
absolutely.
quickly.
Yes. Yeah, he definitely is a level above those guys. And I've seen a lot of criticism maybe on the trade in the sense that he has been passed around the league quite a bit at this point. He's infamous for being traded a lot. He's infamous for rejecting a huge deal by the Lakers early on in his, or through the middle of his career, you could say, and rejecting that deal, it not paying off for him. So people maybe think that he's just kind of a journeyman and hasn't really got anything to him. But I think that's actually not really doing him a favor. And I think it's not really fair to say that, because if we look at his career, started off in Atlanta in 2013 and then was with OKC for 2 years where he played really well, then went to LA, then that's where he rejected the contract, and then the trade season started for him, you could say. And he's been to Boston since then, Houston, Toronto, Brooklyn, Detroit, Golden State, Brooklyn again, and then at the beginning of last year signed a 3-year, $44 million contract with Sacramento, which at that time already received a lot of rightful criticism, I think. Then the Cavaliers, they needed someone to handle their backup unit, maybe in a similar way to the Hornets, and they acquired him midway through the season. But then again, the Cavaliers weren't happy with him, and so now here we are, and he's ended up with the Hornets. But if you look at the teams he's played for, he has played for quite a number of good teams, and he has obviously had some more and less successful years of his career. Especially the last one should be considered less successful. The Sacramento team was obviously not that good to begin with, but for the Cavaliers, if you listen and read to what the Cavaliers faithful and the Cavaliers beat reporters have put out since that season ended, nobody was really happy with Schröder, I think. Everybody kind of attests him that he has a great spirit, that he is some sort of a leader, that he can provide energy off the bench, but there is definitely the feeling of this guy is past his prime when it comes to athleticism, scoring, maybe also him kind of being a bit too turnover prone. And so he has all of these opinions around him and all of these teams in recent years. How would you even start to evaluate someone like Dennis Schröder? How would you begin to evaluate him? Because you can't really look at his Cavs tenure on its own, because it's just about, I think, 30 to 40 games. Do you want to look at his Kings tenure alone? Because that's a really bad team. And then you go back to the previous season and he's played for 3 different teams. So what do you make of all of these small sample sizes?
Yeah, I don't make much of the small sample sizes individually, but if you look over the last 3, 4, 5 years of his career, all of the numbers are generally the same. He has been the same guy for a long time. On offense, he's not an efficient scorer. He only has 2 career seasons with an above average effective field goal percentage. So he gets up a lot of shots, doesn't hit them effectively, has never really been a 3-point shooter, low volume, around the 35th percentile in terms of attempts for the majority of his career. Pretty not super accurate, save for a couple of spike years in Brooklyn and Oklahoma City. And he doesn't really do much on defense. He doesn't affect the possession game in terms of creating turnovers, blocking shots, getting rebounds on either end. What you're getting from Dennis Schröder is a guy that lives in the paint. He's able to break down a defender with or without a ball screen. He's a pretty good decision maker when he touches the paint in terms of throwing slip passes to big men, kicking the ball out to 3-point shooters on the wings or in the corners. And I watched back all of his postseason assists with Cleveland this past season. And there was a lot of quick decisions that you want to see in this Charles Lee offense. He catches the ball in the perimeter, is really good at understanding the leverage of the defense. So he knows where the defender is going to close out from, swing it to the right guy who can then either take a shot or attack the closeout. It's just, there are some high highs in terms of that, but it's just the play to play, variation is pretty wild with a guy like Schröder. So I don't make much of the small sample sizes. I can't look at the 30 games he played in Cleveland and key in on the stat there, or the 40 games he played in Sacramento last year, or whatever it was the year before that, wherever he played. I don't even remember at this point. You said he played for the Celtics. I looked it up. I have zero memory of Dennis Schröder in a Celtics jersey.
That was about
40-something games.
8 years, eight teams ago. So you are forgiven.
And he got traded at the deadline on the team that made the championship and lost to the Warriors. I've just had zero recollection of that. So hard to take anything from those individual stops, but he's kind of just been the same guy for a long time. And it's kind of what you see is what you get with Dennis Schröder at this point.
That's definitely fair to say. You mentioned it already. He has a good feel on how to read closeouts, attack closeouts. I think he is at his best. Also, by watching a lot of his national team games, when he can attack the paint and when he maybe doesn't have to be the initiator of the offense. But he is someone who capitalizes on an advantage. He is still pretty quick. He has, good footwork on his way to the paint, so you can trust on him to create paint touches, especially when somebody else drives first, kicks it out. And then you have Schroeder, who isn't a great 3-point shooter, but he's always been around 34, 33%, so he's still someone who can hit them fairly well. And then he can also attack the paint. Not a great finisher, but again, good enough to where you have to respect him. And then his ability to spray passes out from that point, you already mentioned it. I think it's great research that you looked up all of his assists from his Cavs playoff tenure. That's really something that will stand out, I think, especially, as you mentioned, in this Charles Lee offense that is going to be reliant so much on movement from side to side and not only one player creating offense, but everybody being able to maybe handle the ball a little bit and then also everybody being able to capitalize off of advantages. If you look at the bench right now, you mentioned you have Dennis Schroeder and he's gonna be the guy, the floor raiser, the guy who hopefully brings a certain steady level of offense, especially to that bench lineup. What does this mean maybe for Christian Anderson Jr.? Do you think those two can work together offensively and defensively? We saw that this Cavs team really struggled on defense, especially with, Harden, Mitchell, and Schroeder. Two of those on the floor at the same time, or three even, is asking a lot of your big men. And if you compare the front court of the Cavaliers to the front court of the Hornets, you will find a lot less defensive talent on the Hornets front court. So do you think Christian Anderson Jr. will play less now, maybe? Or could you even say he has, a mentor along his side? The Hornets think he will trust this guy. Let's just put him out there together and see what happens.
Yeah, rewinding quickly to something you said, what he's good at, the paint touches, the rim attempts, the kicking the ball to shooters, that's exactly what the Charlotte team needs.
Yeah.
They don't have guys really that can break down the defense without a ball screen that you can throw the ball to late in the shot clock and get a paint touch and create something. It's Dennis Schroeder and Kobe White are probably the two best on-ball players in Charlotte right now. I think Brandon Miller has a ceiling that he can reach. We've heard Concanipple talk in interviews recently that that's something he's trying to add to his game. Grayson Allen has some of that too. I should maybe have thrown him in with Schroeder and Kobe, but they're going to rely on Schroeder to create offense, and that's what he's good at in terms of getting past defenders and creating shots. In terms of Christian Anderson, I'm kind of expecting him to spend a large chunk of the season in Greensboro. I think he's gonna spend some time up there continuing to develop his body, continuing to adjust to the speed of the NBA game. I think people saw Sion James start at point guard in the summer league and handle the ball a ton and set up offense, thinking that Charlotte was going to have him be the backup to Kobe White and have Christian Anderson kind of be the third point guard. I think that was more to develop Sion as the third point guard, knowing that they were going to bring in a guy like Schroeder or whatever names you've talked about this offseason, Russell Westbrook, D'Angelo Russell. So yeah, I'm not going to be surprised if Christian Anderson spends a lot of the season in Greensboro, which I don't think is a bad thing for him. I'm still pretty bullish on the long-term potential of Christian Anderson. He just needs to fill out his body to, again, adjust to the speed of professional basketball. The moments were fleeting, but there were some really good moments of Christian Anderson playmaking in summer league.
For sure.
I think if the shot fell, if he shot 35, 40% from three in summer league, the conversation around him would be a lot different. Because if you watched him play, it was much better than the stats lead on. So I think Greensboro would be good for him, and we'll probably see Christian Anderson kind of get integrated into the team in the second half of the year, depending on where Charlotte is in terms of the playoff hunt. I wouldn't be surprised if Charlotte is fighting for the playoffs, 7 seed, 8 seed, 9 seed around the trade deadline. If we see a move that was similar to the Kobe White move from last year, where they bring in a really high level backup point guard to replace Schroeder and kind of insulate the offense a little bit more. But if Charlotte is not really fighting for the playoffs, they're the 12th, 13th seed, like some people expect, then maybe you replace Schroeder with Christian Anderson at that point, and it's sink or swim for the rookie who has at least had 8 months in the system, playing in the G League, getting a lot of high level reps with the
Yeah.
Swarm, and then you're going to integrate it back to Charlotte in the second half of the season. So I'm not expecting much from Christian Anderson in his rookie year, which is it's not a bad thing. So smaller point guards take longer to develop, and giving him the runway of Greensboro with a coaching staff that is, I guess, albeit different now with DJ Baker in Orlando, but a coaching staff, a team as a whole that has proven good at
Yes,
developing
for
young
sure.
players in terms of Tijan and Liam McNeely, Musa Diabate. Even Nick Smith had looked good whenever he came back from Greensboro a couple of years ago for whatever that's worth. So yeah, that's right now with Coach Anderson. Still bullish on his long-term potential. I don't think this move for Schröder says anything about that. But in the short term, let him work out some of the kinks in Greensboro before he gets reintegrated the team in the second half of the year.
I don't like the names that this Dennis Schröder conversation has brought out of us today. From Damian Ball to Theo Maledon to Nick Smith Jr. There's been a lot of pain reactivated within me, so I'll
Right.
I'll have to deal with that tomorrow on our off day. Let's
Sure.
let's talk about the defense again for a little bit, because let's say Christian Anderson Jr. he goes to Greensboro, spends most of his time there. You're still looking at a rotation that won't be easy to get to run defensively. You have a lot of guys that are generally able to defend to some point, but you really lack rim protection. You really lack strong perimeter defense. You have, in Knipple, I think is a really good example. Someone who probably is a bit of an underrated defender, who definitely isn't, slacking or letting his guy run loose in transition, but who just isn't able to impose himself on a ball handler in a meaningful way. Where does Dennis Schröder fit in with all of this? Because you mentioned he doesn't make a huge defensive impact, and adding a guy like this to a team that already has no defensive impact makers, that does sound a bit concerning.
Yeah, I think we'll see a lot of Schroeder playing with Ryan Kalkbrenner, who, Kalkbrenner has mileage varies for the fan base
It
on
does.
Kalkbrenner. I'm a fan of Ryan Kalkbrenner. I think he's better than people give him credit for. I think his ability to play drop coverage and wall off the rim allows everybody else on the team to stay at home on 3-point shooters. If you know
That
that
is fair,
Kalkbrenner is
yes.
just going to completely wall off the rim and lower the opposing team shooting percentage in the paint, then that allows everybody else to kind of stay home and make everybody else's job easier on the team. So with Kalkbrenner manning the paint, Schroeder can defend the pick and roll, and worry a little bit more
Yeah,
about his guy specifically. If he's playing off ball, that he can just stick out there and not get beat off of the dribble. So I think we'll see them pair up a lot. Kind of like I feel like Sexton and Kalkbrenner played together a
sure.
lot last year, and I don't know the numbers with those two guys on the floor, but the way Kalkbrenner defends, it can kind of insulate I keep using that word, insulate, a smaller point guard who struggles on defense. So the Charles Lee system is, you're limiting like shots at the rim is the number one thing that Charlotte tries to do. So I think systematically there'll be ways where Charles Lee can scheme around a poor defender like Schroeder, because he did it all of last year. I mean,
That's
there
fair.
wasn't any high level defenders on the Hornets last year outside of Sion James, Musa Diabate, and Ryan Kalkbrenner, and Charlotte was still about league average on defense. So I trust the coaching staff to minimize Schroeder's defensive impact, but in a good way.
Yeah, I think I agree with that mostly. Again, another thing that has to be mentioned here: Schroeder is another guy who tries defensively, and
Yes.
similarly to Christian Anderson, I think, who also isn't a good defender, even worse than Schroeder, probably makes even less of an impact on the glass. But we also saw this in the summer league. Christian Anderson Jr. tries. He does his best to make any sort of impact, and Dennis Schroeder is does that in a similar way. He will stick to his guy. He will try to get his hands in there. He is an instigator for sure, both in the NBA and also in the national team. He's been someone who likes to get under the opponent's skin. So someone who will definitely, I think, I would take the over under 2.5 fights started by Dennis Schroeder this year, especially against the Pistons, his former team. I think there's some potential there. What what does it mean for this team maybe to get someone in Schroeder who not only does he have a lot of experience, but he brings a lot of ferocity and competitive spirit to the court. And that's not saying that the other veterans they have right now, let's say, for example, Pat Connaughton, but also Royce O'Neal, Grayson Allen, those guys obviously all have competitive spirit, but they are not as aggressive in expressing it. Let's put it that way. Do you think that's a positive, a negative, something that this team needs, or something that it should have stayed away from?
I think it's absolutely a positive. I mean, you saw how much the fan base rallied around Moussa Diabate and even Miles Bridges to some extent after the fight against Detroit.
Yes.
Charlotte has just never really had any guys like that. I can't remember Charlotte ever really having a true like enforcer, if you want to use that term. And not that Schroeder is, the big like Dennis Rodman, Markeith, Marcus Morris, you know, that you
He's
think
no
of when
Charles
you really think
Oakley.
of.
No Charles Oakley.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
Charles Oakley in terms of enforcer, but like he's going to get in somebody's face. He's going to like throw a little elbow here and there, like if his teammate is getting in a scuffle. So I think it's good. I think Schroeder is one of those guys in terms of that, in terms of his impact on that side of the game, more of like the like chicanery, like outside of the like physical playing basketball stuff. He's the type of guy that you love when he's on your team, but you hate him when
Absolutely.
he's on another team. And when he's at his best and he's like positively impacting the game of basketball, which I think he will do in Charlotte, especially, with the role I foresee him playing and the relationship with Jeff Peterson, Charlotte knows what they're getting. If he's impacting the game positively on that end, the like, extracurricular stuff will only kind of galvanize the fan base a little more and get more people in his corner. It's honestly super similar to Colin Sexton, right? Like what I keep coming back
Sure.
to is this is just the exact same move they made last summer trying to acquire Colin Sexton to fill this role on the team. The play styles are similar. Some of that stuff is like similar to, Colin Sexton defending guys off the ball all the way into the tunnel. Was that Steph Curry last year?
Yes.
That clip that went around. I think we'll see some of that from Schroeder. If he can just be a little more impactful on the actual games, then I think the fan base will really fall for him and root for him this year.
Yeah, I agree. And just to bring up an example from the national team, for maybe the NBA folks who aren't too familiar with the German national team, there was an instance, and I think this was actually on their run to the World Championship, where he had a disagreement with Daniel Theiss, another well-known NBA player from Germany. That must have been 3 years back now, and they had a disagreement on the bench, and he cast him out very explicitly. But
In
that
German or in English?
in German.
Okay.
I will still not say what he said, but there was a pretty clear argument going on there, and in the end, that brought their team closer together. And you can always say, is it the right thing to handle your business at the sideline whilst there's a timeout going on? Maybe not. But he's someone who will get into anybody's face, really. He will get into Kobe White's face. He will probably get into Jeff Peterson's face if he disagrees with something. So you can count on him to hold everybody else accountable. We've talked about the offense now a bit. We've talked about the defense a bit. We've talked about the off the court stuff. If you had to grade this trade from, the usual grading scale, the American one, I'm not going to use the German one, what would you give it?
In terms of process, I mean, it's hard to give it anything other than like a B plus, A minus. I mean, Charlotte turned a guy in Trey Mann who was out of the rotation last year, who didn't have a clear pathway to minutes, into somebody that is going to play right away and play a big role on this team. In terms of how I think it's going to actually impact Charlotte in the coming year, I mean, Schroeder is just like we said earlier, he kind of is what he is at this point. He's not a super high level backup. He's just kind of a middle of the road backup point guard. So I'm not expecting him to come in and have this overstated impact on the team.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, I think I'm expecting him to play again very similar to how Colin Sexton was last year. So how does it impact Charlotte next year? I think maybe like a C plus, B minus. So I mean, I'm pretty positive on the deal. I think Charlotte needed a guy like Sexton that is just that floor raiser of the second unit. But I'm not expecting him to come in and set the world on fire. I think it's just a solid base hit where Charlotte made a move that they needed to impact the roster next year. But it's not going to be anything like acquiring Kobe White at the trade deadline that really
Yeah.
kickstarted Charlotte's second half surge, or that really didn't kickstart it, but aided in Charlotte's second half surge. I think it's more of just like a solid move that needed to happen and made a lot of sense for both teams.
Yeah, I agree mostly. I think it's interesting because when I initially read the details of the trade, um, I was kind of surprised that the Hornets didn't have to give up a second rounder. Maybe that, I mean, looking back at it now, I can understand it, but you give someone up on Trey Mann, who, as much as I, like him, seems like a great person, had some good stretches in Charlotte, had some really good highlights in a Hornets uniform, but he was unplayable pretty much last season. And you get someone who, again, despite all of the inefficiencies that we've talked about, despite him not being a good defender, has played consistently for a number of teams, and a lot of teams have seen enough in him to give him a shot, whether that's Golden State, whether that's Cleveland. Teams see a guy in him who they can trust to run their second unit. And so I would have thought they would have needed a second. Then I read an article from a Cavaliers beat reporter who was very happy that the Cavaliers didn't have to attach a second round pick just to get rid of him. So there's probably a middle ground to be found. I think I'll be at a B minus, maybe similar to you.
Yeah. I've seen both sides of it too, which makes me think it's a good trade. I've seen
Exactly.
both sides of the aisle saying, "Oh, I can't believe Charlotte didn't get 2 second-round picks here, or Cleveland didn't get 2 second-round picks here." Which, if both sides are saying that, then to me, it's just a solid trade that needed to happen.
That's pretty positive. Yeah, and again, he's not gonna be a world beater. He's not gonna knock out 20-point games on the regular, but he's experienced. He's a guy who, I hate to use this terminology because it gets some people upset, but he does bring that Hornets DNA. If that's what you want to believe in, then he does bring
23 minutes into recording, and it was the first Hornets DNA mention for Dennis Schröder. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
we waited a long time to drop that.
Yeah, I hope that all of the people who would take offense to that phrase have turned the video off by now. But he really does bring that intensity and that mentality, and so you gotta be happy with it in that sense. And if he does anything more than play a solid backup role, then it's where you enter the B plus A minus territory. That kind of territory. I think that's gonna do it for us. Do you have any last words on this? I mean, it's not your first podcast appearance on this channel, because for those who have been around since the very beginning, there is, I think, the second episode on this channel is Owen and Matt talking about probably some previewing some game, I believe, or some stretch of games.
It was like a 3-game stretch where Charlotte, I think, played Miami, Boston, and somebody else.
Dallas. I think Dallas.
Dallas. Okay, yeah, it was like a 3 or 4 game stretch that Owen and I thought was the biggest stretch of the season, and they came out of it pretty good before things kind of went off the rails from down the stretch. But yeah, my second appearance here. No, nothing else. I think just to wrap it up, Trey Mann was unfortunately going to be a zero for this team this year. I love Trey Mann, great to the media, a good player when he's healthy, and Charlotte swapped what was going to be a zero for something that could be Dennis Schröder, who could be like a 2 out of 10. And if nothing else, like, they're getting somebody who's going to contribute, and it's a positive move in my book for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I'm hoping for him to be a 3 or 4. I would say, yeah.
Even that's a win for what Trey Mann's role was in the second half of last year, and what it was projected going forward. I wish him all the best in Cleveland. I'm excited for him to get a second chance in a new setting where he can maybe show flash of the player he was before the back injury. Nothing but love for Trey Mann, but his time in Charlotte was always on a short clock. So for them to move on, for him to get a guy that's going to play, just a solid move in my book.
Yeah, agreed. I've already seen multiple trade scenarios that are sending him right onto another team, so I truly hope he can stay there. Ideally play some good minutes there, because, again, you mentioned it, good guy, and if he's healthy, he can make a positive impact. We've seen that before.
Absolutely.
So that's gonna do it. You can, of course, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this episode. We would be very thankful. You can leave a like if you enjoyed it. If you think that this episode was bad because Owen wasn't on it, then please don't comment it because it will boost Owen's ego. But you can think it to yourself.
Send that to my DMs. Yeah, send those messages to my DMs on Twitter. It's not going to offend me.
Send those to Matt's DMs. He will forward them to me, and we will see them. Do not post them under here. We cannot have Owen see that. Otherwise, you can also find us on Spotify under Buzz City Breakdown. You can give us 5 stars. Again, if you think this episode was super bad, you can also give us 0 stars. We take no offense. And you can also listen to us on the podcast feed on YouTube, where we upload all of these episodes if you want an audio-only option via YouTube. And that's gonna do it. Thank you guys for watching, for listening, however you enjoyed or didn't enjoy this episode. And we'll see you on Tuesday.